Good morning and welcome back to the John Muir Way. And today this is the third section of the trail heading east from Helensburgh to Dunbar. I'm starting in the hutting community of Carbeth. I'm walking through to the first large settlement on the route since Helensburgh, Kirkintilloch. It's going to be a hike of about 12 miles today, and for the most part it's going to be pretty flat, although we've got to get to Strathblane first, which will be around 3 or 4 miles from the start. So it's a grand morning, a bit cold again, but looking forward to this one. Let's see what this trail's got to offer. Dungoyne is looking fabulous this morning. Nice to see a bit of blue sky. And just over the brow of this hill we'll be joining up with the West Highland Way for a couple of 100 yards. It'd be good to see some West Highland Way walkers out on this morning, if there's anyone made an early start. So the Mulgai is about 4 miles off to our right, and the two routes sort of coincide for maybe about 200-300 metres, although the multi-use route follows the West Highland Way from Gartness to here, so this is where they join up. I love the weird and wonderful shapes of all the huts here in the Carbeth community, and every hut's got its unique personality, and some are really well built, some are just totally ramshackle, look as if they've just been slung up. But it's a fascinating place, this. I also apologise for the constant rattling that you can hear, or the clunking noise. Essentially the housing unit on the GoPro selfie stick that I'm using has broken, so it's constantly vibrating, unfortunately. I promise I will get a new one, because it's very annoying. As you probably work out yourself as I'm walking in, there's that constant rattling. But yeah, this place is just, it's magical, and I can see the attraction of why people come up here and use the huts. But it's been used like this since the early 20th century, really. It just isn't a place to escape the heavy industry and pollution of Glasgow and Clydebank. So this is the point that we meet the West Highland Way, coming in from Mulgai, and we're going to hang a left here for a few 100 metres. And very briefly, and the ways will part again which is a pity. I'd love to be walking to Fort William just now. Just had a wee chat with a West Highland Way walker there. Started early this morning and doing it in slow time over 8 days, which is a great way to do it. Take your time and enjoy the scenery. Still in the West Highland Way here. Campsie Fells just looming in the background. As I said earlier, part of me wishes that I was heading up to Fort William. I suspect anyone who's ever watched a West Highland Way vlog will be rather familiar with this place, because I've absolutely no doubt it features in every single one of them. So for those of you on the way, you're just 4 miles from Milgai. But they could do with a sign for Dunbar and Helensburgh on that as well, which would be quite good. But yeah, I'm sure they add to this every time that I come up. There's always new gnomes in it. But I just love this place. It's great, all the taxidermy in the window. But we leave the West Highland Way just over the brow of this hill and head up to the right. This is where all routes rejoin. West Highland Way off to the right. And we head up here. Just working out a little bit of distance there, and the signpost at the bottom said Strathblane. I think it was 2 1/4. So if you're walking right through to Strathblane from Balloch, now I've done about 1.5 miles this morning so far. So you're probably looking at about 4 miles from Carbeth to get through to Strathblane. Now the distance from Balloch to Carbeth that we worked out was just over 14.5. So if you're going right through to Strathblane, it is quite a step. You're looking about 18 miles. Here's our first sight of Strathblane, just nestled below the Campsie Fells here, and they look spectacular with the sun on them like this. These cliffs all the way along. Now you can see where the cliffs have collapsed. However many years ago, probably thousands of years, these have happened. And the scree slopes just completely covered in grass. And as we go down, we should be able to get a clear view of Dungoyne as well. Be heading straight through this housing estate. That's the first sort of residential area we'll be walking through on this trail, which always to me feels a bit odd. But what a backdrop for this place, really fantastic. Just nestled beneath the cliffs of the Campsies. It wasn't that long ago the Campsie Fells seemed to be way in the distance, and now we're right down underneath it. Just at the top of the hill here is the turn off that we're looking for, and this will be taking us onto the Strathblane railway path. So about 5 miles to Lennox Town, and maybe about 8 miles, possibly 10 miles to Kirkintilloch. So this railway path is the same railway that the West Highland Way picks up, just the far side of Strathblane at the Glengoyne distillery, and this connected Aberfoyle to the Edinburgh-Glasgow main line at Lenzie. So we follow it almost all the way through to where it joins the Edinburgh-Glasgow main line. But this, in its heyday, was referred to as the picnic line. Mainly it was a great route for day trippers. I don't think it was ever particularly commercially successful. It did have a connection through to Stirling as well, with a junction off the Aberfoyle. And unfortunately for Kirkintilloch, even if they'd kept that stub, it would have been a really useful place to have a station for commuters into Glasgow. But yeah, it is what it is, and we've got this walking and cycling route now. And I think the chances of this ever reopening are slim to none, but certainly in today's climate, a route through to Aberfoyle and the Trossachs may well have been quite a busy route. Just coming out the end of this cutting now, the Campsie Fells here are actually a line of extinct volcanoes. Now, I've no idea what the timeline is, but just on our right here is this lump of rock, and this was a volcanic plug. This is lovely at the moment, just complete change in the character of the walk, quite flat and through these quite lush fields. We're right down in the Kelvin Valley, but yeah, still enjoying this, although I'm beginning to feel the impact of the surface on my legs. It's been a long time since I've been on this section of path. Probably last time was cycled down it as a kid. Maybe I do drive the road just over at the foot of the hill there on a relatively regular basis. I'll just let this bike by. Cheers. where was I? Yeah, but this has actually exceeded my expectations by quite a long way. I did have a preconceived idea. I think it's probably because I have walked between Lennoxtown and Kirkintilloch on a regular basis. I know that, I'm familiar with it, but this is really pleasant. Nice change of scenery from the sort of mountainous land we've been in the first couple of stages. So yeah, pleasantly surprised at the moment, I must say. Despite what I've said about the Campsie Fells, there are a couple of good walks up here. One of them is just along that ridge there. There's a car park halfway up the side of the hill there, access from Lennoxtown, and a road that goes right through the Campsies to Fintry, known locally as the Crow Road. And you get up to the top there and there are some fabulous views over Glasgow, and it's quite a nice ridge walk. You can walk, you can get right along the edge there, although it is typical Campsie Fells terrain up there, bog and sphagnum moss. Also just below the car park there is the small hamlet of Campsie, and it's worth a diversion. I think there's a little art gallery up there, craft shop, and there's a cafe as well. It's a little bit off route, it may be about a 1.5 mile round trip from the path, but it's a lovely little spot actually. And if you're on the bike, there's a cycle shop called Wheelcraft up there as well. It's an absolute plethora of signs here. So this is the turn off to Campsie, and there's also another sort of shorter local route here called the Thomas Muir Trail, not to be confused with the John Muir Way. Yeah, it's up there is a diversion to Campsie. It's maybe 3/4 of a mile, maybe even a mile or so. So it's a little bit out the way. We'll see if there's a distance on it. I was saying 1 kilometre, so maybe not quite that far. But I'm going to carry on into Lennoxtown, and Lennoxtown was the seat of the family Lennox. I think it was Malcolm of Lennox was closely involved with Robert Bruce in the Wars of Independence. There is I think there's been several Lennox castles here. The seat of the Lennox family was a Lennox castle. I think there was a sort of more modern building put up in the 19th century, which subsequently was sold on and became I think a sanatorium or a sort of home for people with learning difficulties. Unfortunately, I don't think it was a particularly nice place. Gutted by fire relatively recently, in the mid-2000s. 2008 seems to ring a bell. It closed fairly recently as well and was gutted by fire shortly afterwards, which is a pity, because I think it was quite an impressive building. But the grounds are now home to Celtic's training grounds, and there's been sort of fairly substantial housing estate built on it in latter years. But I think the castle itself is standing in ruins now. I've stopped just for the moment to showcase this woodland and the birdsong. This is riddled with wild garlic, absolutely covered in snowdrops, but this will smell wonderful in a few weeks. It'll be quite impressive when it comes out in flower too, but nearly every inch of the ground is covered in wild garlic. It's fantastic. Really beginning to get the feeling that we're coming into sort of a more urban area, the housing estate here, and getting close to Glasgow. This is really now quite a satellite town for Glasgow. It's maybe only half an hour away by road, if that. And it's only going to get sort of more urban as we get towards Kirkintilloch, which I suppose Kirkintilloch is really the northern edge of the urban sprawl of Glasgow. Just had a much needed pit stop in Lennox Town, one of the wee cafes there. Nothing particularly fancy, but yeah, much needed sit down break, soup and a toasty. So I've maybe got about 5 kilometres, possibly 6 into Kirkintilloch, so 3 or 4 miles left. But first we've got to pass through Milton Campsie, which I think is it's about 2 miles away. Be about the halfway point between Lennoxtown and Kirky. This is a bit of an awkward road crossing. This cargo as we leave Lennoxtown. Only a short distance to Milton Campsie. Yeah, it's a bit of a relief to be out the town. Again, I suppose it's like any trail that goes through or near an urban environment. It's not particularly unpleasant, but the route just becomes functional. So, but this is sort of more what I was expecting and where my expectations were for the day. And it's going to be a little bit like this all the way through to Kirkintilloch, which should take me about an hour now, maybe a bit longer. Kirkintilloch, well, it's probably somewhere that you've never really heard of, and is one of those names that you look at for the first time and you think that's unpronounceable. But the town has got a long history, and it's, you can't be for sure, but it might be down to the Romans that the town exists in the first place. Now, Kirk in Scotland generally refers to churches, but in this case it's actually a corruption of the old Celtic word for castle or fort, and it appears in places like, especially in Wales, like Carnarvon and Caerphilly, places that had castles, and the original name would have been Kirkintilloch, which actually means fort at the end of the ridge. Now, this probably refers to a Roman fort on the Antonine Wall, and there is a fort in the town. I don't think it's been excavated for quite a long time. It's quite possibly one of these places that was last excavated in the early 20th century. But over time, Campsie became Kirkintilloch. And not only that, in more modern history, you will be familiar, I'm sure, with what the town produced for the country, and it's almost an international icon of the UK. And this item came from the Lion Foundry, which was an iron foundry, and they produced all sorts of stuff, sort of decorative ironwork. But they had a contract with the GPO, and up until they lost that contract in the early 80s, about 1984 I think, the foundry shut. They were producing the iconic red telephone boxes, and these were produced in Scotland really in two locations, one in Kirkintilloch and the other was the Cairn works out towards Falkirk. So any of these red phone boxes, if you can get behind them and look at the plate, you'll see there'll either be the Cairn Foundry or the Lion Foundry, Falkirk or Kirkintilloch on them. So the next time you see one, go and have a look. Now, it's actually worth stopping in Kirkintilloch. Now, it's not the prettiest place in the world. It's not bad. It's not the worst place in the world either. But the reason it's worth stopping there is on the main street. There is a fantastic little museum. Now, the museum's called the Old Kirk Museum, and it's in quite an ancient church. I think probably dates back from maybe the 17th, 18th century. The church was superseded in the 19th century, or the late 19th century, certainly. But the museum there goes through the town's industrial history and the Roman history as well. And although it's small, it's well worth a visit, and you could probably spend a good afternoon in there. So it's worth checking out. The best place to have a look, I'll maybe pop a link below, but the best place to look would probably be the East Dunbartonshire Council website. They're the ones that run it. But if you're staying in Kirkintilloch, it's definitely worth trying to plan to have a visit. And coming into what remains of Milton Campsie station, and I think this is about the only, I use the word preserved very loosely, station on the route. I think it's the only one that still has this sort of infrastructure intact. The old posts there that would have held the name board. I guess the bridge was filled in for a bit of extra support. It's an information board up here as well, but it's certainly the only place on the route where this kind of infrastructure remains. Oh, heavy echo. So there is a coffee house here as well, cafe. Just some of the walking routes in Milton and Campsie. I've maybe not filmed as much as I might have on this section. Several reasons, I suppose. It is all a bit samey, and I think the other reason is inexplicably I always find filming in front of other people, it feels rather awkward still, which is a bit crazy really, because I'm plastering all of these up over YouTube for the world to see. But yeah, it feels awkward. But yeah, I'm feeling the surface now. My feet and my hips are a bit sore. It's been tarmac all the way from Strathblane, and this looks as if it's been recently surfaced. I know years ago when I used to walk this, it was just sort of type 1 with wind dust over the top, and it was a bit forgiving. But yeah, this is relentless on your joints, unfortunately. And here's the remains of the viaduct I was talking about. It's looking in a bit of a state actually. It's a pity they took that bridge out. I wonder if it was maybe just a metal girder bridge spanning that gap. But the masonry there certainly doesn't seem in the best of health. And on either side. But there is a junction path here, so it's saying 1.5 k's into Kirky from here. And sort of to continue what I was talking about earlier on, now Kirkintilloch is landlocked. It's nowhere near the coast. Well, it's a good distance from the coast anyway, and certainly the Clyde. But it actually had a shipbuilding industry, and quite a substantial shipbuilding industry, and it produced ships for the canal and what became known as Kirky puffers. And these were sort of little steamboats really. I'll see if I can find a picture and put one up on screen. It's the kind of thing that Parahandy sailed in those stories. But these things were seagoing, and I think they were quite an important part of the trade on the Forth and Clyde Canal. But yeah, it's quite a diverse town really, and sadly it's all gone. The canal was reopened, and there's a bit of heritage stuff goes on, but it was a bit of an industrial powerhouse. That's new. Must have opened up a new path here. Well, I say new path, it looks like it's been there a while, but opened it up since the last time I was down here. I think it's safe to say welcome to the thriving metropolis that is Kirkintilloch. You maybe just see the church spire up there. That is probably actually the old Kirk Museum. Well, that's the town centre where the main street is, but as you can see, just industrial units either side, McDonald's and a Lennox. Is this what we call civilization? Not quite the way I was planning on finishing this, as the access to the canal is shut on the official route, so the car's up here anyway, so I'm picking the car up here. But this is the Broadcroft Hotel, the town's hotel. It's actually been done out quite nicely. It's been renovated quite recently, but yeah, so the town centre's not that far off route. It's maybe 200 or 300 metres if you want to come up to it. But anyway, that's the end of stage 3. And once again, if you're enjoying this series of walks on the John Muir Way, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up or a comment below, and I'll hopefully see you for section 4. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.